It is an honour and a privilege to be here today, so thank you very much. In true startup fashion, I've got about 5 things to operate at the same time, so bear with me. And I just want to say, DC, you can be my co-pilot. I'd be very happy with that. It'd be amazing. This is kind of a full circle moment for me, really, because I had a career before technology, and then in 2012 moved into, at the time, what we were trying to not call AI, because at that point, no one wanted to have this thing called AI. It wasn't very exciting, and we co-founded a company called ProFinder. And the concept to it was quite simple. The idea was we just got to get data on people in a good place, and then we use things like matching algorithms, and we connect people, and we'd solve the planet of all sorts of problems. The interesting thing was, though, every time we talked about an algorithm, every time we talked about something that wasn't necessarily just straightforward, it turned folk off. It turned VCs off at the time. It turned everyone off. So fast forward kind of 12 years on, it's quite exciting to be up here on stage talking about the future of tomorrow, which is generative AI. I guess very quickly, in terms of what this means and what we want to get through this, is a bit of a kind of a show and tell around what we think is important, some of the key principles that we want to talk through as we start to go through the presentation, but also the fact that we're here, from a Google's perspective, to really support the ecosystem. And certainly my role within all of that is to make sure we're able to help support from inception stage, where you might be a one-person startup, through to the success of perhaps an IPO. So across all those stages, we're here to support. And importantly, and this is what the cool thing about AI is, and generative, is that it can support you at all stages, because you don't need an awful lot of data. You don't need all these wonderful things we're going to talk about. So some of the principles are pretty straightforward. So let's kick off with what we're going to run through today. So we're going to start with a little bit of a view of the revolution that is generative AI. We're going to talk through the AI adoption and assessing readiness, Google's approach to generative AI, and then finally new launches and getting started. So the revolution that is AI. I think we're all pretty comfortable that things have advanced over the last 30, 40 years and are moving at quite a rate of pace. It's interesting as well, because I think the term generative is obviously something we're hearing an awful lot of currently, and I wish it existed 5 years ago when I sold my startup in this space, because I think I might not be working today, but that's a different story. But the reality here is that if you think through what happened, say, in the 90s, well, actually in the 70s, we got compute power. So we're able to take things off mainframes, we're able to actually start expanding and giving scalable models. We then moved probably into the 90s, where things like mobile came to fray, and Shazam in the early days, they used the VC, this quick story, it wasn't part of the deck, but the Shazam, they literally got money from a VC, and they went to Woolworths, and they used to basically rent the entire stack of CDs for that weekend, rip it all off in a warehouse in London, and then they'd store it, and then they'd send it through mobile. So the Shazam we think of today started very differently, and that's in their time period of starting their company, how computer powering and AI and things like that evolved just goes to show that actually what you do today might be able to be completely modeled to what you do tomorrow based on the rate of pace we are accelerating. We then get into the noughties, and things like social get quite exciting, and cloud. And now we're at that next kind of evolution. So we're kind of at the 4th industrial revolution, where technology is beginning to think for itself, maybe. It's beginning to get more predictive. It's beginning to allow us to scale. And to DC's point, really, it's not to replace anyone. It's to enable us to be quicker, more efficient, smarter, and actually use the bits that we're blessed with, our brains, to help us be the best versions of ourselves, hopefully. So, with that said, 5 key areas that I think the investment for AI is going to be, and actually what we've seen over time. So customer experience is clearly something that the world is looking at. We've got competitive market share, we've got employee productivity, new product development, and then the acceleration of innovation. And the reason we put that last is because some of this stuff is just evolving over time. And it's just getting smarter with how we interact with it. And some of it isn't actually, it's additive in the sense of a customer service is improving. That is maybe an easy place to start, because it might not disrupt your core business. So I think some of the principles here are, where are the safe places to start? And a couple of staggering, well, maybe not staggering for all, but I find them pretty big numbers. So at a guess, how much do you think the TAM could be in 2030? So the IDC do this as a report, by the way, it's not a made-up stat. What do you think is going to be the TAM for AI in the market in 2030? Anyone? I'll help you. It's 1.5 trillion. Now, 2030 is not far away. So what about next year? Anyone got an idea what we think maybe the cloud, what the spend could be in IT spend? 204 billion. And that's why I've got my notes here to make sure I don't get this wrong. So that's not far in the future. So this money is being spent. People are willing to do it. It's going to evolve. So being part of that ecosystem is really exciting. It's going to enable businesses that don't exist today to flourish, but it's also going to disrupt the way that business works today in a positive manner. And if we look at the McKinsey studies on this, AI's potential impacts in the global economy could be up to 26 trillion. So that's equivalent of 25% of today's current global economy. So the impact from Gen AI equals 8% of the current global economy. I just find that's a scary number, but a number full of opportunity, hopefully, as we see it. So I say all these wonderful numbers, I say all these amazing facts, and then we come to the reality of life. Where are we as a business? And this is businesses of all sizes. So less than 10% of companies, well, only 10% of companies are performing AI or ML at scale. And the reality is that scale is going to matter in these types of situations. Right, so on the 18 different buttons I've got to press here, let's go for AI adoption and assessing business readiness. So obviously it'd be remiss of me to stand here without kind of talking through some of the fun stuff we're doing at Google, but I think we want to deliver this from a standpoint of we want to help. So out the back we've got a stand, we've got some demos, we're offering a plethora of different opportunities and credits and professional services to really help you understand the readiness of your business and help you get to that point. So there's a few points I'm going to touch upon in this presentation. So the first is we want to help you innovate. We want you to be able to take advantage of the, and actually this is probably an interesting point, because obviously there's been some marketing around some of our competitors that came out pretty quickly, and obviously depending on your viewpoint, we are either catching up or we're ahead. But the reality is the very first search engine has a lot of the algorithms we still use today. But we just didn't call it AI. It's just really advanced Excel or Sheets or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. It was that this was computer programming that we've advanced year in, year out. And actually, with cloud, what we did was we took what we built as Google, and then we opened it up to the world. But we opened it up to a world in terms of open ecosystem. We don't charge for egress. So there's always amazing things where we truly believe on choice and that kind of multi-cloud environment as well. So to do that, you need to build at scale quickly, and you need that open integrated AI portfolio. And then you need to accelerate time. So whether you are SMB or whether you are an enterprise, it's about becoming enterprise ready. And I think having done a couple of startups myself, the main thing we always panicked about was if we were successful, would the enterprises work with us? Because we needed to be enterprise ready. So a lot of the stuff we talk about here is around those key principles. That means that irrelevant to the size of business and scale you're at, you're going to have the components in place to allow you to deal with that full ecosystem from enterprise through to SMB. I had a lot of coffee, so I'm speaking very quickly, so please bear with me. I have two very small children at home that keep me awake at night a lot. So what does this all mean? And this is about kind of where you are mentally, I guess, in terms of the model and where you've got to think about yourselves. So there's a couple of ways we could look at this, but all of them are brilliant because all of them lead to opportunity. So if you are building your own models, brilliant, you're already a disruptor. And that's fantastic. There's lots we can go on and do that with. If you are using your models as your go-to-market, then you're powered by AI, which is a tagline that I think a lot of firms are quite happy to have at the moment. And then if you have ML in your production today, brilliant, you're augmented by this opportunity, or you're at the very beginning, which is probably the most exciting of it. You don't quite know what you're going to disrupt in your own business processes or what you're selling. So this is a phenomenal opportunity. So I think at each stage, it is just opportunity. Now, with opportunity, you have to have process, and there's things we have to think about. And this, I'm doing a lovely, this is really easy, look at us, this is amazing. The reality of life is these things do cost money. These things can cause mistakes, so we have to make sure we have processes and you're ready to go down that journey. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. So this is just, I guess, kind of a relatively nice example of how you kind of go through the flow I just mentioned before. And I think the interesting thing about this is this is not necessarily symbolic of the entire organization. This could be about a department in your organization. This could be about your entire company. So once again, all these different ideas don't necessarily have a sequential flow. You could get to kind of Gen AI disruptor and then go back to the beginning again, depending on what your business is doing. And I think that's the way you've got to keep thinking, which is we've got to disrupt our own businesses always. And the answer is probably not always going to be AI. And AI means many different things, and generative is one type of AI. But this is what I want, just if you can take some things away from this, it's like, just make sure we're constantly thinking about how we can look at this kind of virtuous cycle. So let's start getting on to how we start to define stuff. If we look at this, we've got define your business. So by the way, almost strikes you as common sense. And I think that's the nice thing about it, which is actually this, when it comes back to how we do this is about change management. This is about all the things we've done when we've implemented many technologies over the years. Some of the core principles aren't changing. And I think that's something you should be confident on because, yes, we get to a point where we start to POC and put things into production and there's a cost analysis. But ultimately, to get to that stage, we're still doing the things that we've done in business throughout time. And that should give us confidence that we understand how to do this. So we're going to define what the business use cases are, what are the key objectives, what will the focus areas be. Then we're going to look at, are there other things being played with? So are people looking at OpenAI, Anthropic, any other Gen AI solutions? Importantly, do you know what everyone on your payroll is doing or you yourself are doing? Because there's things we need to consider around what types of technologies you are using, the security of those technologies, how they therefore use their data and make sure that you've got a sense of privacy around that, and we'll talk about that in a second. Then there's the data itself, and I think ultimately this all comes back to data. You've got to get your data in a good place, because there's no point trying to build fantastic models or have all these amazing ideas if your data doesn't exist in something you can do with. And to make that point, this isn't about a big enterprise. You could be a small, in fact, we used to work with a very small startup in food subscriptions that's gone on to be much larger now. And the very first use case they did about 4 or 5 years ago was about after 5 weeks of having some agent transcripts, they were like, can we do something with these? So at that point, they were like 5 employees. They'd had maybe less than a couple of 100K turnover, but they thought at that point, let's just start looking at the data we do have. So it's not about having a big data footprint. And then it's about the environment you've set up, and then it's about customer readiness. So how soon do you need to have that workload in production? And then the cost benefit to having that workload. Like, is it something we need to action today, or is it more something actually, let's get our foundations right, and we can do this in 2 or 3 years' time? Probably not years, more like months. So if you've all got your phones here, here's, and take a quick QR code. It also gives me a chance to breathe. This is a data readiness exercise. So it's got 22 questions. It's purely an assessment. It's very directional. It's recommendations. It's just to give you an idea of some of the things you need to consider. So I'll leave this here for a few seconds. If for any reason, though, you haven't been able to grab it now, we will share the deck afterwards and you'll be able to take this. And at the stand at the back, we can also, when you go out the back, speak to the folk. Cool. Everyone got it? So that's a yes. So how do we want to approach as Google? We want to be bold. This is about trying to move forward the direction of travel of the in a good way for society and businesses, and can we be the best versions of ourselves? But we're absolutely keen. It have to do it responsibly. And when I talk about some of the advancements some of the other providers have done and the speed they've come to launch these things, one of the reasons why we potentially are slightly not always at the forefront of that is because we're being responsible with it. So the technology existed, we tested it, we dog fooded it ourselves, we've had a lot of this stuff in existence, but it has to be enterprise ready. And there's kind of 5 key principles I'll talk about that we feel comfortable that when we release it to the world, it's in an environment that makes safe, and all the key things I'm about to talk about are there. So I feel like I've got more exciting examples here. I'll come on to my promise. So I'll whiz through a couple of these because this is just more around the tech side. But we're in multiple regions now. We've got data residency at rest. So more importantly, we can store data in the right places that's relevant for your business, and all the other stuff with EU regulations coming in that we'll start to think about, and obviously the US when they start to do their thing. These are really important things that whether you're starting a business day one or you're going through international scale or growth, we need to consider some of this stuff. The next point is, what is some of the cool innovations that we're releasing at the moment? So there's been a lot of press this week. In fact, from writing this presentation to delivering this presentation, it's already out of date. That's how quickly we are moving this forward, and not quickly enough for me to get it signed off by PR to talk about certain things. But the key here is that it's already evolving at a formidable rate. So we've got the, by the way, I'm mildly dyslexic, so this word really causes me some trouble. So this is why I wrote it down. Indemnification. So this is like a milestone for me for getting that right. Protections that are extended to all our models, like Palm 2, Imagen, Gemini, and all the advancements that are having. And we're not just training data, we're training the output of models. So we've got our Vertex AI platform, and it's basically making it really accessible to all to play in this open ecosystem. Right, so these principles I keep talking about, what are they and why are they important? And I think, once again, if there's kind of 5 things to leave you with, kind of permeating on it, would be these points. Privacy. You've got to ensure that you retain control. I don't know why I'm looking up here. You've got to ensure that you control your data. You've got to make sure you understand how it's being used, where it's being used, and that ultimately it's your data. And that's very, it's incredibly important. This is your business. Choice and value. Bigger isn't always better. You've got to be able to make the right choices for your business, for your job, for your workloads. And that can also be multi-platform as well. Grounded in faculty, we've got to trust that this information comes from a good source, that is accurate, that is true. It's going to be easy to get started. We're going to be able to play with the stuff, have some fun, and then we're going to be able to do security at scale. Going back to that point that if you're an SMB wanting to work for an enterprise, they've got to trust that you're able to deal with their data. I won't play these now, but we've got some use cases and case studies we can show you. But these are just a couple of ones that we're pretty proud to be talking about at the moment. Wendy's, I think, is a really interesting one because if I think through, I hope you don't eat as much fast food as I used to, but if I think through when I turn up to get some fast food, there's like a million, well, it's not a million, but it's like, I'll say a million different ways to ask for the same order. In accents, tones, vocabulary, everything changes. So Wendy's had the idea of, was it possible to start capturing all of this and then automate it and create a chatbot that could respond and understand all the different variations and permutations of an order? And the idea was just to speed up that queue, so you have a better experience, that you're not waiting 15, 10 minutes to get your food, you can do it in 4 or 5. So, it's a really interesting way of applying AI into something that and for them though, it's an edge use case. It's made a better brand experience, but it's a way they could test AI in a relatively safe environment without disrupting some of their core business processes. Uber, generative AI for customer success agent chatbots. So they're using significant uplift in both responses there. They're also using synthetic data to start looking at their product development areas as well. And I think for those that are more technical, the replicate's very interesting because like 30%, 30% or so of their code is now ghost written. So sort of human, make sure that it's correct, but it just means they're literally accelerating their development through using AI power to develop their code. So where does this take us? So I guess the final point of all of this, and never have 3 buttons at the same time, is the Gemini era for us personally. And what does this mean? So this is where we're starting to really allow you to play, to model in a kind of multimodal environment. So whether it's text, whether it's images, we want you to be able to be in complete control and take advantage of this. And what's quite exciting about the way that this is moving forward, quick plug for Vertex AI, this will be done on Vertex, but I want to kind of get onto this quick image here, which is, I think, I never thought I'd find toothpaste exciting, but this is completely generated from the logo through to the image, through to the placing, through to the studio. So imagine the ability now, when you're literally launching your product, to be able to basically tap in some text to say exactly what I want to do, the logo, the positioning, and everything, and 2 minutes later have maybe your entire library of stock images ready for you. Something like that is formidable. Now, importantly, if you're a creative in the room, you're going to get a better use of this by being the creative. So it's a bit like a photographer. You can give someone the options to be able to go in and use Gen AI to build their lovely photo, but if you're a photographer and understand tone and color and direction, you can teach the model to be more expansive. So this isn't replacing, this is just speeding up and being more efficient around what we do. And then finally, if I kind of move on to the getting started with Google Cloud, really, and I know this hasn't necessarily been use case specific, and I think the reason why we want to kind of present it like this is really we want to show that there are core things to think about here. Everything we're going to see today is probably going to be very exciting, and it's going to be a whole new world, and there'll be amazing demos, but we really want to get to the point that everything is achievable, but to do it, you need to start from a really safe place. So we've got to identify the use cases, we've got to look at the strategy, look at the organizational readiness, and we've got to test and scale. So if you come and talk to us at the end, we're really excited about working with everyone here today, putting a little, they're going to kill me for saying this, but putting a bit of cash into it to help you all, and make sure we can enable you to be the best versions of yourself and take advantage of the technology that we do. So what I'll leave on is once again like a little couple of resources here. So if you're able to grab these on your phone, please do. Otherwise, we can get them at the back there. And there's also some information around our credit programs at the end. But I think that the key thing from us is we really want you to realize your tomorrow today. As I said at the beginning, this is a full circle opportunity for me. I've been at Google for 3 years. I've had different roles here, from running data and AI across EMEA through to working like I am now with the really stage startups. And the reason why I genuinely, drinking the Kool-Aid, want to stay here is because having been on the other side of it, having literally set a business up day one and gone through that journey, like if this type of technology existed 12 years ago, it would have been a very different story. And that's what I find so exciting about this, is that you really have got an opportunity now to probably realize all those dreams and aspirations and opportunities in your head. And there's processes and structures now to enable it. And there's companies like ourselves that truly want to get behind it. So I have no idea if I kept time ahead of time. I spoke very quickly, so hopefully somewhere in the middle. But it's been an absolute privilege and pleasure, and I hope you have a great day today.